Hey, Be'ez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Hey, and we're just going to finish up just quickly the last part of um, Daf Lamed Dal Lamed Beis and Lamed Hey. It's a very seemingly uh, all connected daf. Hi, Louis. We just start Lamed Dalid Amud Beis. And towards the last part of the page, the line ends with Rabbi Meir. We learned yesterday that although the Tanakama holds that a financial case can be started during the day, it has to be started during the day, but you can finish it at night. And Rabbi Meir said no. Rabbi Meir has an opinion, and he holds that you compare a financial case to the case to viewing a nega. When somebody's tamei, the kohen has to see if there's a nega. So just like a nega is only seen by the kohen during the daytime, so also a financial case can only be decided. That means the final count can only be made during the daytime. So then the Gemara is asking, my The question is, but the pasuk says that the din can happen at any time, and according to Rameir, it's not at every time. It could only happen during the daytime. So what does Rameir do with this drasha? Amar Rava says, La suya yom hamu'unam. Wow. It comes to include that you can judge a financial case even in, if it's a cloudy day, if it's in London. I would think that you would not be able to judge a financial case in London in when it's cloudy outside, because you cannot judge a nega when it's cloudy outside. It's now we learned in the Mishnah, you can't see a nega in the morning or in the afternoon. You cannot see it indoors. You can't see it on a cloudy day. Something that's dark near Aza looks too white. Not during the exact noontime of Nesha Aza near Akea. So because the strong it'll look weak. So in other words, you couldn't see a nega during the cloudy days. So I would think that you can't do a financial case also when it's cloudy outside. That's why the pasuk says that it doesn't matter the weather outside, as long as it's daytime, you can judge a financial case. Now the Gemara finishes off. What does he do with that pasuk that says that a financial case can be judged during the daytime, on the day that you inherit your children? My Ovidle, he doesn't need it, because how does Rameir know that a financial case is judged during the daytime? Because it's compared to a nega. So then, what does he do with this pasuk? Biyoim hanchiloyes banav. Answers the Gemara. Hi Sheldon, we just began. We're just finishing up yesterday's page, just Lamed Daled on the base, and then we'll start by the blue over here, a new piece.
Okay.
So the Gemara says, what does he do with that? So Rameir needs it. What Rabbi Baba Chanina said in front of Rab Nachman. The Torah says that during the daytime you can make your children inherit your property. So you can make your kids inherit during the daytime, but not during the nighttime. So this was ridiculous. Amalei. So they asked Rabbi Baba Chanina. Rabbi Chanina. They asked, whoever dies during the daytime, then his children inherit him. And if he dies during the nighttime, his children will not inherit him. That makes no sense. So what is b'yoyim hanchilay mean? Dilma din come out. What Rabbi Baba Chanina meant to say, what Rab Nachman is explaining to him, I think this is what you meant to say, that the dinim of Nachla, a certain law regarding inheritance, is being stated over here. The Tanya we learned in the Brayso. A inheritance is like a court case. Uri kol parsha kula liasdin. An inheritance is like a court case. When a guy is on his deathbed and he is giving instructions for his last will and testament, that already you don't have to go to Bezdin. If there's three people in the room, they don't have to go to Bezdin and say and now repeat the court. They can make the court right by his bedside, and that's enough. Rav Yehuda Amarav, the Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav, Shloisha shenichnasin levakes achola, 3 people that come to visit the sick, Rotzu Kaisvin, they can write down the will, the last will and testament, and then they have to go to Bezdin to make sure to make it effective. Or Rotzu, if they want, right then and there, Oisin Din, they can convene a court right at his bedside, because you could make a din. Shnayim, but if there's only 2 people visiting him, well, they can't make a court. Koisvin, they could only write down what his last will and testament. They noisin din, and they can't make a court, even because the 2 people are not sufficient number to make a court. The Amar Rab Chizda says, Lo shanel b'yom. This is only if they come to visit him during the daytime. Ava b'layla, if they visited him at night, so then, since you can never convene a court at night, Koisvin, they only write down what his last will and testament, even if it's 3 people. They don't make the convene a court case there. They at the time that they are listening is at nighttime, and they could only be witnesses, so they can't convene a court the next day and repeat what they said. They ain't aid nasadain. Once you're a witness, you can't switch over to become a judge, and so that's what b'yom hanchilais barav means, to teach you that you don't have to necessarily go to court to make a last will and testament and how you want your assets divided. If there are 3 people in front of you, just by you blurting it out, the 3 people can say, "Oh, we're a court," and it's effective. And that could only happen if they come to visit him during the daytime, not at nighttime. And that's what B'yom Hanchilais Banav teaches you according to Rameya. And this is what Rabbi Nachman suggested to Rabbi Bachinina. This is what you meant? Amalei. So he said, in Hachikamina, that's what I meant to say. Okay, let's go next. New Gemara. Dinin nefashos danim b'yom. The court case, a capital punishment case. Let's say somebody is a murderer, and you wanna convict him. So you convene the court during the daytime, but you have to. It cannot happen in one day. You have to sleep over it. The Mishnah says you have to sleep over it, and the next day you can decide. And also, one other point. You cannot finish it at the night before, at the night. Just like a financial case, we said before that you could start during the day and finish it at night. A capital punishment case can only be started during the day, and the final count has to be made during the daytime as well. So the Gemara says, how do you know that? The pasuk says like this: they were hanging people who did avodah zarah, the avodah zarah of Baal Pa'or, right? And the pasuk says they hung them neged hashemesh when the sun was still out. So that's when the Gemar Din happens. The final judgment, the closing of the case, is during the daytime. And unlike what we have here, on death row, there's no such a thing of death row in the Jewish world. When the Bezdin says Yechayev Misa, because let's say a person was Mechal Shabbos, right in 5 minutes later they kill him. That's it. So they decided, the Bezdin, that all these Jews did the avodah zarah Baal Pa'ar, and therefore they hung them neged hashemesh while the sun was still out. So we see that capital punishment cases can only be judged during the daytime and finished during the daytime. Amar Rab Chizda. So the Gemara just wants to clarify, how do you know v'hoika? The word v'hoika means that they hung person. The truth is that every person who got skila, who was like stoned, they would hang his body right after he died. So that's menayin. So how do you know that this word haika shitliya? How do you know that the word haika is an unusual synonym to the word hanging? The pasuk says in Tanakh, "Vaykanan l'Hashem b'givashol b'chir Hashem." It's a very fascinating chapter in Tanakh where it describes that there was a hunger for 3 years, and David HaMelech wanted to know, why did God bring a hunger and totally decimate the Jewish people in a hunger? So he asked the Urim V'Tumim, and they told him 3 reasons. Number 1, Shaul HaMelech wasn't buried properly. He was buried very fast. He was killed during the war against the Plishtim, and therefore it was not befitting for this king to be buried so quickly. The other reason is that Shaul killed out the city of Noiv Ira Kahanim, as you know, because they were harboring David when he was trying to run away from Shaul, and the pasuk also says the Givonim had complaints because they were working for the Kahanim, and now they lost their livelihoods, and some 7 Givonim were killed. So in order to appease the Givonim, David HaMelech asked the Givonim, what would you want me to do? So they said, we want you to take 7 of Shaul's grandkids, or 7 of Shaul's children, and hang them. And And so David HaMelech actually reburied Shaul in a nice procession and hung 7 of his kids. And then the Chumash says, the Tanakh says the hunger stopped, subsided. So they hung these kids. Now we go to Lamed Hey Lamed Aleph. Uksiv, and the pasuk says, "Veitikach Ritzba bas Ayasasak v'tetei lo elatzur b'tchilas katzir." And Ritzba, who was a pelegish, not a real wife, had 2 of her children hung. So she wanted, and they didn't hang them just for a second. They hung them for a couple of days, for a long time. So she spread out a sack to be under the tree where her children were hanging to prevent the birds and animals from eating the human body. So therefore, since it says the hoika, and we know that Ritzpah was sitting under the tree that she spread like a mat under the tree where they were hung. So therefore, we see that the word v'hoika means hanging. Now the pasuk says uksiv. The pasuk says by the Baal Par. Getting back to the Baal Par, when the Jewish people did the Vera Avodah Zarah, and Avodah Zarah, if we look at it like Havdil today, it's like a drug problem, and it takes the fabric and the soul of the person. So, and this angers the Eibishter. So, Vayayma Hashem El Moshe Kachas Kol Rashi Am. If you read the pasuk, it says that God says to Moshe, take every head of the Jewish people, every judge of the Jewish people, and hang them. V'hoika oisam. So the Gemara asks, Im ha'am chatu, if the people were sinning, Rashi Am chatu. What did the judges? What avera did they do? Why does the pasuk express itself that the heads of the people were sinning? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Amar Yakash Baruch LeMoshe Chalik Lehem Batei Dinim. God said to Moshe, you got to quickly set up courts to judge all the people, not to rush the judgment. But God wants all the people who are doing this Baal Pa'ar, this Avodah Zarah, should be killed. And in order to get them killed, you have to set up courts. And then, my tama, why did you have to set up so many? Why can't you have one court? Is it because one court can't handle the same case twice in one day? Let's say a court killed somebody a Chil Shabbos. Can they handle the next case right after that? Sure, they could. So why did you have to have set up many different courts? The only time a court needs extra time is when they're doing. If they're dealing with one type of avera like Chil Shabbos, and then they're dealing with another type of avera of Gili Arayos, so they can't do it in one day. But if they're constantly judging Avodah Zarah every minute, so then they could judge one after another. So they could have one court, and you don't need many courts. Ella says the Gemara, Kadesh Yoshev Charein Af Misrael. In order for God to subside his anger against the Jewish people, he wants to see every person who is a Rosh Hashiva, a judge or something, get involved in judging the people and getting the people who did this Baal Pa'ar killed, so that Hashem could subside his anger and take away the plague that he was giving at that time. The Mishnah continues, but so how do you know that, as I said before, that a Dine Nefashis case, you have to overnight it? It means you can decide, you can carry out a debate, and then the next night, then you can't decide until the next day. So why do you need that? Where do you know that source? Because the pasuk says it used to be that I guess Jerusalem was full of justice and righteousness because they would sleep over it. They would sleep over the judgment. Now they're so quick to judge, they don't let it. They don't overnight it. So therefore, meratzkim, they're killers. They're killers by not sleeping over it. So we see that a capital punishment case has to be overnighted. That's the Rab Chanina's version. Rava says, I have another pasuk. Pasuk says, Ashru chamoitz. We strengthen or fortunate or yashikoyach, so to speak, chamoitz. Chametz means somebody who's oppressed, but chametz also means ashrei dayan shemechametz is dinah. It's praise is the judge that sort of leavens his judgment. In other words, he lets it hang at least overnight so that he can think about it for the next day. Ve'idach, why did Rab Chanina use this pasuk? What does he use this pasuk? Ashrei chometz, Ashrei chometz v'loy chometz. You judge first. That teaches you that you judge first the victim, and then you judge the oppressor. In other words, sometimes you can have a victim and two victims and one oppressor. For example, somebody lends somebody money, right? And he doesn't get it back. So the lender is the victim. He takes the borrower to court. But the borrower can say back to the lender, but I gave you a collateral, a mashkan, and you never gave that back to me. So what do you judge first? You judge the lender's case because he's victim number one. And then once you take care of that case, then you can judge back regarding the borrower getting his mashkin back. So that's what that pasuk teaches you. According to Rab Chanina, ve'idach, what does Rava do with Rab Chanina's pasuk? Hai milesi my avadlei. What does he do with milesi mishpat? Rab Lazar Amar Yitzchak. Rab Lazar Amar Yitzchak. It teaches you something else. It teaches you that God likes whoever. Kol tanis. During the fast days, they used to go around the town to collect food, actual food, to distribute to the poor who don't have what to break their fast on. And sometimes the Gaboim were lazy about it, and they didn't distribute it all right after the fast. So kol tanis shemalinim bayas tzedakah, whoever every fast day that they overnight and don't distribute all the food packages right away is ki'ilu shayfech damin. It's as if they're killing people because the poor people are relying very much to break their fast on their food packages. The Hanimino, that was only said berifta v'tamre, on bread and dates. Ava bezuza chiti v'sari less than ba. If what the Gaboin collected was money or wheat or barley, which need time to prepare, so the poor people were not relying on that. So therefore, you don't have to distribute it all on the fast day. The Gaboim could go home and break their fast and distribute it the next day. Lefichach ein danim. The Mishnah says we can't judge a capital punishment case on Friday. My tama mishum deloyavsha. You can't judge a capital punishment case on Friday. Why not? Let's start the case on Friday and finish it on Friday. Well, you can't start a capital punishment case on Friday and finish it on Friday. Because we said before that you can never, if they're going to pronounce the guy guilty, they have to overnight and sleep. So therefore, they're going to be announcing the verdict, the guilty verdict, that he's do the death penalty on Shabbos. The daini b'mal Shabbat. So then let's finish it on Shabbos. And kill a guy on Shabbos. Now, killing a person on Shabbos is chil Shabbos, but it's a mitzvah to kill somebody. If he is a murderer and they finish the din on Shabbos, so they should be able to carry out the capital punishment right on Shabbos. And it says the Gemara, Ein Ritzicha Doicha Shabbos. The carrying out of the bezdin of killing somebody does not override Shabbos. And that's learned from a pasuk. So, Velikte Leurte. Okay, let's finish the din on Shabbos and kill him much of Shabbos. You could only finish the din. I'm sorry. You could only, in other words, the Gemara's question is finish the din on Matzah Shabbos. So the Gemara says Neged Hashemish B'inam. We can't. You gotta finish the din during the daytime and kill him during the daytime. Says the Gemara, "V'ligmei dina b'shabata." Let's finish the din Torah on Shabbos. V'liktelei b'chad Shabbata. Instead of killing him much of Shabbos, kill him on Sunday. So nimtza atem anes dina. You're causing him, like I said before, there is no such a thing of executioner's row, death row in the Jewish world. If they were pronouncing him guilty on Shabbos, they have to kill him on Shabbos. So therefore, they cannot pronounce him guilty on Shabbos because they won't be able to kill him on Shabbos. They will only kill him on Sunday. And there's no such a thing of death row in the Jewish world because you're causing him extra pain. Let's start a bezdin on Friday, okay? Shabbos, you're not going to finish the court case. You finish it on Sunday. Minshe Tambe, people will forget their reasonings. They're going to forget. Over Shabbos, you have a Kiddush or whatever, and you're going to forget what your emotion and feeling about the case is, the judges. Even though they have two stenographers who are writing down exactly the judge's opinions, but prior to the conclusion of the case, the Kaisim Dibram Zakrim Dibram Chayvim, they write the reason of who sees innocent, who sees guilty. Ni the Pumakas, they can write it down on a piece of paper. Liba de they cannot write the person's feelings. Hilka Chlayavsha. It cannot be, it's too much of a delay. So therefore the Gemara concludes, like the Mishnah says, that the Mishnah says that we don't start a court case on Friday. Okay, a capital punishment case on Friday. Now, Amalei Rish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara says Rish Lakish asked the question of Rabbi Yochanan. Let us say, this is a side point, but it gets to the point that why we don't do Bezdin Misas on Shabbos. So first Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, why don't we say that any time a person dies, we can bury it on Shabbos? Why not? I have a kal v'chayma. Shabbos. Just like in the base of Migdash, you can bring shecht karbonos in the base of Migdash on Shabbos. So avoida, the base of Migdash, override Shabbos. Kfuras meis mitzvah doicha oisa. But burying somebody overrides the base of Migdash. How do you know that? The Torah says, it says that a Nazir, let us say a Nazir who's a Kohen Gadol, so he has two reasons why he should not touch a dead body. And the Torah tells us that if he's never supposed to be matama himself to his father, mother, brother, or sister. Matama loima, what's the extra word sister? Of course, if you're not allowed to touch any dead body, even your relatives. Let's say the Kohen Gadol who is a Nazir is going to do an avodah, shecht his carbon pesach, or give a bris to his son. We go to Amud Beis, v'shama shemeis lemeis, and then he hears that somebody died. Yochel yatama. If he does, might think he's allowed to bury the body. Amart lo yatama. We tell him you're not supposed to bury the body. You're a kohen gadol. You're a nazir. You're not supposed to bury the body. Yochel kshem sheni b'tam lachoyse kach eni b'tam meis mitzvah. Let's say he finds a dead body on the floor and nobody's there to bury it. I might think a kohen gadol who is a nazir should not bury that body. Talmud loyme lachoyse lachoyse udeini metame avam metame lemeis mitzvah. So we see that the kohen gadol who's going to stop doing the service of bringing his carbon pesach, and even though he's a nazir and everything like that, to bury a dead body who has no place, so therefore we see that the order is like this: the least of the things is Shabbos, the second more chomer is service in the temple, and the most strongest, the most powerful is burying somebody. So now, Shabbos nitchis mipnei avoda ein edin shekehei kvuras metzmis sudoichaisa. So therefore, any time a person dies on Shabbos, you should be able to bury it. Isn't that should override, just like the Beis Hamikdash override Shabbos? So burying somebody should override Shabbos, which overrides even the service in the Beis Hamikdash, as you see that the Kohen Gadol had to bury somebody if he found a dead body in the street. Amalei, so Rish Yochanan said, Ritzicha Techiach, Bezdin doesn't kill anybody on Shabbos. So, and therefore, we see that having to do with burying somebody on Shabbos, the Torah was consistent that we don't bury somebody on Shabbos. Shedoiches avoida, although Ritzicha, if Bezdin has to kill somebody, they will pull him out of the Beis Hamikdash. They nedoiches Shabbos, and we don't pull a person. We don't say that the avoida is that killing Bezdin killing somebody will override the Shabbos. And the Gemara didn't bring the source yet, so the Gemara asked the question: why can't Bezdin kill somebody on Shabbos? Mikal v'choyma. I have a kal v'choyma. Just like the service in the temple could override Shabbos, and therefore Ritzicha overrides the service in the temple. Why? Because the Torah tells you that if there's only one kohen in the world and he's a murderer, and by you taking him and judging his case and killing him, there will be no more service in the Beis Hamikdash. The Torah tells you, take him off the Mizbeach and bring him to death. So we see that killing the Bezdin, killing somebody, will override service in the Beis Hamikdash. Shabbos shenitchas mibnei avoda ein edin shetei ritzicha d'chaisa. So therefore, Shabbos, which is overridden by avoda, certainly Bezdin should be allowed to kill somebody on Shabbos. So the bottom line is, this is where we're holding, and now we'll end it. So another minute. We're trying to find out, why wouldn't Bezdin be allowed to kill somebody on Shabbos? Why not? It's a mitzvah. He's chayiv misa. Amarava Paska Tanda Rabbi Shmuel. In the Rabbi Shmuel, it was already taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. The Tanda Rabbi Shmuel, Lo Savara Eish. The Torah says, don't light a fire on Shabbos. Ma Talmud Loima. What's the point of that pasuk? So the Gemara interrupts it. What do you mean, Ma Talmud Loima? What's the point of that pasuk? Ila Rabbi Yosef Lav Yotze, Ila Rabbi Nasan Lechalak Yotze. The Torah tells you, although the Torah tells you don't do any work on Shabbos, the Torah specifically says don't light a fire on Shabbos. So the question is, why did the Torah write that specifically? So there's two reasons. Either it's machlekes why. The Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa, Havara, the fact that a person lights a fire on Shabbos, Lelav Yotze Div Rabbi Yossi. The reason why the Torah, according to Rabbi Yossi, singled out that you're not allowed to light a fire on Shabbos, because it's different than doing any other malach on Shabbos. If you sow or plow or plant on Shabbos, you chayev misa. But but with lighting a fire on Shabbos, according to Rabbi Yossi, you would only get Malchus, or you wouldn't get Misa. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Nasa says the reason why Havara is singled out, L'chalek Yotz, is teaching you that if you forgot a Shabbos and you did all 39 malachas, you're not chayiv one carbon, you're chayiv 39 carbonis, if you did it by accident. So, Loisabara Eish is not an extra pasuk. Ella, Amar Rava said, the question is, why does it say, don't light a fire? The Torah says, don't light a fire in your house on Shabbos, wherever you live. Why should the Torah tell you that you shouldn't light a fire wherever you live on Shabbos? Of course, Shabbos is not determined by the place where you are. It's not an Israel type of mitzvah. It's a mitzvah on your body. These type of mitzvahs apply whether you live in Israel or whether you live in Chutz La'aretz. So So why did the Torah say specifically, don't light a fire in Shabbos if you live in Lawrence? Why? So that Torah is telling you, Moishavus Mishum Rabbi Shmuel. Omar Talmud Echad, one student, said and explained it in the name of Rabbi Shmuel. The Torah tells you that if someone's chayiv misa, Bezdin has to put him to death. Then you put him to death, whether it's during the weekdays or on Shabbos. Then why did the Torah tell you that if you mechal Shabbos, you put to death? Killing somebody is chil Shabbos. I would think that if you do any other malacha except killing of the Bezdin, you're chayiv misa. But if Bezdin has to put somebody to death, I would think that they're allowed to do it on Shabbos. Concludes the Gemara, maybe Mrs. Bezdin is also not supposed to be done on Shabbos. So the Gemara goes back and forth. Maybe the Torah says that Bezdin has to put somebody to death, but I don't know, does the Torah mean that death penalty only can be carried out during the weekdays? Maybe it could even be carried out on Shabbos. That's why the Torah wrote, so the word b'chol moishvei seichem refers to Bezdin, and the Torah is telling you another thing. If someone's chayiv sreifa, one of the 4 capital punishments, in Bezdin, don't do it on Shabbos. B'chol moishvei seichem, Bezdin, af Bezdin. The Torah says, don't light a fire. Don't do sreifa in Bezdin on Shabbos. And therefore it applies to all the 4 Mises Bezdin are not done on Shabbos. And that's also the reason why we don't bury somebody on Shabbos as well. Also, all related. Okay, we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.